Before the start of the 2025 NBA playoffs, the Boston Celtics were not seen as potential suitors for Giannis Antetokounmpo. However, everything changed after Jayson Tatum's injury and the shocking second-round loss to the Knicks. With Tatum expected to miss most of the 2025-26 season, the Celtics might try to keep their title hopes alive by trading for Antetokounmpo. Several insiders believe Boston has both the draft capital and the players necessary to pull off such a deal. Colin Keane of Sporting News proposed a three-team trade involving the Nets. The Celtics would receive Giannis Antetokounmpo, Pat Connaughton. The Bucks would receive Jaylen Brown, Nick Claxton, 2031 first-round pick. The Nets would receive Kristaps Porzingis, 2027 first-round pick. Keane explained why this proposed Celtics trade would extend their championship window for several more years. This trade wouldn't just make the Celtics favorites for the NBA Finals based on a ridiculous new core of Jayson Tatum, Giannis, Derek White, and Jrue Holiday. It would also save Boston money, he wrote. The Celtics would be a top-tier team after this move. Full disclosure, CBA rules prevent second-apron teams from aggregating contracts, so Boston would have to exploit a loophole to deal both Brown and Porzingis, perhaps by splitting the deal into two separate trades. Cheers. The Celtics trade Jaylen Brown. It's tough to predict Boston moving on from Jaylen Brown, the 2024 NBA Finals MVP and hero of their championship run. However, Brown's own injury concerns, he played through a torn meniscus in the 2025 NBA playoffs, have sparked speculation about his long-term future in Beantown. John Hollinger of The Athletic is convinced the Celtics could get a major haul in return for Brown. The other route, which we should whisper, is to ask Boston about Jaylen Brown, Hollinger wrote on May 13th. Brown fits much more naturally alongside Davis and Lively, but he's owed $236 million over the next 4 seasons, and Boston's roster is about to get frighteningly expensive. Would Boston consider reorganizing around a New England native and taking a gap year if Tatum needs time to recover? Then again, would Dallas even consider this unless significant assets came back along with Brown? Let us know your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The Celtics are expected to make significant changes to their roster this offseason, and one option they will undoubtedly consider is a trade involving Jrue Holiday. The 34-year-old veteran was a key part of Boston's 2024 championship team and remains a valuable piece of the roster. However, his performance was inconsistent in this postseason, amid Boston's disappointing second-round exit at the hands of the Knicks. Holiday has many fans within the organization and around the league, but his age and contract situation make him a potential trade candidate as Boston looks to retool following Jayson Tatum's injury and a record-projected payroll for next season. The Celtics agreed to a 4-year extension with Holiday this past March, which kicked in at the start of this season. The challenge now for Boston's front office under the current CBA is to find a team willing to take on Holiday's salary while allowing the Celtics to begin their own cost-cutting as a part of the deal. If Holiday is not traded into open cap space, with Brooklyn currently the only team having enough room to absorb his contract, the Celtics would need to bring back at least $22.5 million in salary for any deal to comply with the CBA's matching rules. Which teams might be interested in the veteran guard despite his hefty salary? Let's take a look at some hypothetical trade partners and potential proposals. Win-now teams. This would be the preferred route for the Celtics if they decide to trade Holiday, as it would mean not having to significantly downgrade the return. The team would prefer to move Holiday to a place where he's seen as a contributor, not just as a means to dump salary. That said, trading high-salary players is tough in the current CBA landscape, and finding a home for a 35-year-old point guard who's no longer at his peak won't necessarily be easy. Holiday can still help teams defensively, and with limited free agent options available, acquiring him at a reasonable asset cost could be appealing. A few teams to monitor in this regard: Dallas Mavericks. Proposed deal: Jrue Holiday and draft compensation for Daniel Gafford, Caleb Martin, Jaden Hardy, and Olivier Maxence Prosper, a team fully in win-now mode after a disastrous trade surrounding Luka Doncic. With Kyrie Irving set to miss a significant portion of next season due to a torn Achilles tendon, defensive help is needed. Defense wins championships, according to GM Nico Harrison, so Holiday should be able to help the team on that end as well. With Cooper Flagg expected to enter the equation as the #1 overall pick, Dallas also has a few expendable wings on the roster to help match Holiday's salary. How much Dallas is willing to add to their $192 million payroll next season remains a question. There's no doubt Holiday could help the team immediately, but they might also pursue cheaper salary options via trade. That's why Boston may need to sweeten the deal with a prospect or pick. Likelihood? Considerable, if the Mavericks are high on Holiday. Los Angeles Clippers proposal, Jrue Holiday, and draft compensation for Bogdan Bogdanovic, Drew Eubanks, and Jordan Miller. The Clippers were one of the finalists in the race to acquire Holiday 2 years ago, according to multiple sources who spoke to Mass Live. Boston beat out the Clippers for the guard and could now consider Holiday as a potential addition to the team's aging core of Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. In theory, this is an easy sell for Stevens. The Clippers would be upgrading from Bogdanovic to Holiday and would appear better positioned to maximize what Leonard and Harden have left in the tank. Holiday's long-term contract could give the Clippers pause, as it stretches well beyond the primes of Leonard and Harden. Can the Celtics offer enough to sweeten the deal and make it worthwhile for the Clippers? Or does LA have more attractive options available for leveraging Bogdanovic's salary? Likelihood? Possible. But Ballmer would need to be comfortable paying the tax again. Detroit Pistons proposal, Jrue Holiday, and a first-round pick for Tobias Harris. While it's tempting to view Detroit as a good landing spot for Holiday as a potential mentor to Cade Cunningham, it's a tougher sell from the Pistons' perspective. Holiday's timeline doesn't align with this young core, and his large contract would limit future cap flexibility for younger, potentially better options. There's also a cheaper free agent option in Dennis Schroeder. It's hard to imagine the Pistons making this move unless Boston adds serious sweeteners. That's something the Celtics might understandably hesitate to do, given their limited draft capital. The Pistons have been all in on veteran acquisitions lately, and it worked last season, so it's not out of the question. Likelihood? Not seeing it. Houston Rockets? Proposal Jrue Holiday, and draft compensation for Dylan Brooks and Jock Landale. Ime Udoka would surely love to bring in Holiday to bolster Houston's already solid defense. However, Holiday's career timeline doesn't make much sense in Houston. He's a better player than Brooks. $21 million? But is it worth paying $11 million more per year going forward? Houston's offense also needs more help than its defense, and Holiday doesn't provide much of a boost on that end at this stage in his career. Likelihood? Not without major sweeteners from Boston. Orlando? Magic proposal, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope replacement in exchange for Jrue Holiday and draft compensation. It's not hard to imagine the Magic seeking an upgrade over Caldwell-Pope, especially after he shot just 26.7% from the field in the first round against Boston. However, Orlando's young core, combined with Holiday's high salary and age, once again present a tricky fit. Similar situation here as with the Dylan Brooks hypothetical. Holiday is a better player than Caldwell-Pope, $21 million, but is he worth $10 million more per year? Probably not, especially with so much money already tied up in other parts of the roster. Likelihood? Not without additional reinforcements from Boston. Orlando may also be hesitant to spend big money on a third option. There will be heavy competition around the league for teams looking to land big contracts. Holiday could eventually become a valuable asset for a rebuilding team once his deal gets shorter. For now, the cost of signing him would likely come in the form of draft compensation from Boston. The Celtics would also need to take back 1 or 2 contracts to match salary in these scenarios. This would be a tough spot for Brad Stevens to put Holiday in, just 1 year after signing him to a major extension. Sending him to a non-contending team for the next 3 years would be a tough sell, but it might be Boston's best path to recalibrate for the future. A few potential landing spots to keep an eye on if the Celtics go down that road. Utah Jazz. They were in the running for Holiday 2 years ago when the Blazers were shopping him. They also have the cap flexibility to take on his deal. Even with a few contracts potentially expiring in return, Boston would still need to sweeten the pot. Washington Wizards. How would Celtics fans react to trading Holiday for a future first-round pick just to bring Marcus Smart back, and likely try to flip him again later? Other teams with the cap space to absorb large long-term contracts in exchange for draft compensation. Chicago Bulls. Brooklyn Nets. There are some realistic scenarios. On this list, Dallas, LA Clippers, along with a few more complicated ones. That's why, if Boston doesn't find the right partner or the price is just too steep to move him, there's a decent chance they hang on to the veteran guard for now. It would be remarkable to see him finish this contract in Boston over the next 3 years. But the Celtics do have other ways to move money that might cost fewer draft assets, or even bring more value back. If Boston is fully committed to its younger core, alongside Tatum, Brown, White, Pritchard, moving a Holiday is probably the preferred move, especially if major cost-cutting is on the summer agenda. Don't expect the trade winds around him to die down anytime soon. The rumors are raging, so smash that like button and keep watching so you don't miss what's coming next.